Hey guys, Andrew Esquivel here, back with some more fishy information for you. Today I want to talk about two things that I think get overlooked when trying to diagnose why your shrimp are dying. So, the first thing has to do with food. You see, if we go over to one of my tanks, my neon yellows, I've got a pretty good population here, but I was having an issue where some of the shrimp were dying. I couldn't seem to figure out why. The water parameters were good, they were getting fed, everything seemed to be okay, but I couldn't quite figure out what the problem was. Well, here's the thing. The food that I get is not your typical off-the-shelf shrimp food. And what's in here is what I've been feeding. Now, this is not actually from Wardley. This is just a container I keep it in. If we dump this out, you'll see these green pellets. Now, these green pellets are custom manufactured shrimp food, and they contain a lot of vegetables and such. Here's the problem. I buy this stuff in bulk because I've got a lot of invertebrates. Between my snails, my shrimps, and my crayfish, it seemed like a good idea to buy it in bulk, and for the longest time it's been really good food. All my little invertebrate buddies really liked it. But one thing to remember about this kind of food is because it contains things like vegetables, it does go bad after some time. There is a point where the food expires and is no longer safe for your little shrimp buddies or snails or crayfish to eat. So, how do you know when it expires? The problem is, this particular manufacturer didn't really provide an expiration date. So, what I did was I did a little experiment. I swapped over to a different manufacturer of custom-made shrimp food. Now, I got this stuff here from Aquatic Arts. If you've heard of Aquatic Arts, it's probably no surprise. They're a pretty well-known company that sells invertebrates. Now, here's the thing. Their invertebrate pellets contain many of the same things that these little custom-made shrimp pellets contain. A bunch of vegetables. I mean, in here, we've got green pea, carrot, vitamins, minerals, just a few different things that are vegetables. And because of that, there is actually an expiration date. See, here I can tell when the food is no longer good. This is supposed to be a year's supplies worth, and I don't doubt that it's a year's supplies worth. Because in fact, one full jar of this right here lasted me well over a year and a half. Now, near the latter end of that year and a half, I started having issues. The shrimp were being fed, but they started to die. So obviously I checked my water parameters to make sure everything was okay, and sure enough, everything seemed to be quite fine. But I started to decide that, what if the food is going bad? So I stopped feeding them. And I noticed when I stopped feeding them, they would stop dying. So, based on that little experiment, I concluded that maybe the food has just gone bad. And it's totally possible that it could have. That's why I just ordered some new food from Aquatic Arts, so I can feed them this and I know it's not going to harm them. So far, the shrimp and the crayfish and the snails have been eating it up quite nicely, and now I know when it's no longer a good idea to feed them. On top of that, it comes in this nice little plastic case, which keeps things fresh. It's like Tupperware of sorts. Now, that's the first thing that I started to think of when my little shrimp buddy started to die. The next thing I needed to think of was involving a different situation with my dream blue velvet shrimp. Now, the colony has gotten really small. There was some sort of disease that was plaguing the tank. Now, if we go over to the dream blue velvet tank, you'll notice it's pretty empty. There are a bunch of dream blues in here, but they are really good at hiding. So, I think they're all hiding behind the sponge filter here, or within these little ridges in the sponge filter. I do have one mama shrimp here in a different tank. She's doing pretty good. I switched her from this tank, or from this tank, over to this tank because I know this tank is perfectly fine. I've had plenty of the same species of shrimp, just a different color morph, doing very good in here. So she's a buried female. Hopefully she'll help me repopulate the colony. We see actually one right here poking his head up. Well, anywho, here's the thing. Most people have city water that gets treated by their city municipality. Now, they treat it with different chemicals, and you use stuff like C-Chem Prime to dechlorinate, to get rid of chlorine, chloramine, you know, get the water ready so it's safe for your little invertebrate buddies to swim in. I don't have city water. What I have, in fact, is a private well, which means there are no such chemicals that are used to treat the water. So that means I could have pathogens in my water, but there's no real way to tell. So, what I've done is I've devised a little system. One, I'm no longer using straight hard water for my shrimp, even though they could technically survive it just fine. I've opted for this here RO system. And it's going to be an RO-DI system. I have to get the DI stage still. But what's really important is this stage right here. This is a UVC filter. Now this blasts the water that gets filtered with UVC light, and it kills 99.9% of cysts, bacteria, viruses, and algae. And that's good, because I have no way of knowing if any of that is in my water, so better safe than sorry. Now that water gets put into the vat that you see right here. This vat holds the water that I create from my RO system, and what I've done is I've taken, you see that line of water right there, I've taken one of my UV filters that I normally have in a tank like this, and I put it in here so that way, even though it's already gone through a UV filtering stage, it continues to get blasted with UV to try and kill any pathogens, as well as circulate the water when I mix in the remineralization substances. So that way, I am doubly sure that there are no pathogens in here that are going to be dangerous to my shrimp. Now, I still need to fill the RO vat up again. I just did a water change recently, so that's why it's not full. But what I'm getting at is if you are on a private well, you truly have no real knowledge unless you get some sort of specialized testing to see if there's any pathogens in your water. On top of this, there's two types of well systems. Mine is an extremely deep private well. So my well water comes from going very deep into the earth where there's water that free flows. And because of that, I'm not susceptible to one thing in particular, not generally anyway, which is during a heavy rainstorm, people with municipality water, and I'm in a unique situation because in the area that I live in, the city water is what supplies all the houses around me. I'm the only one around here with a private well. So when there's a lot of rain that comes down, their sump pumps in their homes purge water from their system, and their water sometimes, when it gets purged, contains chlorine and chloramine and other things from the city municipality. Now, what happens is, when it gets purged out of their system, it goes over the surface and over the areas and where my well on the outside begins, where it's the very top portion that gets drilled all the way down. Because of that, my well might accidentally start having other people's city municipality water seep into my well water, which is not good. So that means I may accidentally get their runoff and have chlorine and chloramine and any other pathogens that may be in the area on the ground going into my well, which is not good. Once again, the RO system takes care of most of that, but in any extreme instances where this might happen, I also have some C-Chem Prime just in case, even though it's not necessary most of the time. So these are a few things that I think get overlooked sometimes when it comes to breeding invertebrates, especially when you buy in bulk, especially when you have a well system and not city municipality water, and I think these things might contribute to some very strange situations where diagnosing the death of your invertebrates becomes very difficult when you've tested for just about everything. So I hope this blurb was helpful if you happen to be in these situations. It seems like my situation is improving drastically ever since I've made these changes, and I hope to see that my colonies do very well from here on out. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, show your friends, check out my other videos. I got plenty of them, and as always, I'll see you next time.